What is up, survivors? This is Harv with Harv's Corner. Today we're going to do a quick top 5 utility dinos that I use pretty often, regardless of what map I'm playing on. If I have them and those creatures are available, I'm going after them because I want them. When I think utility dinos, I think about creatures that are going to be hanging around my base for the most part and doing typical base stuff, not really roaming around, pretty much hanging around the base, things that I'm going to need to keep my base running. The little day-to-day things a little bit easier. So with that, I'm going to jump right into it, and we're going to start with the number 5 going to number 1. There's a couple of other creatures that I would definitely add if this was a longer list, but I specifically made it top 5 so that I went for the ones that I absolutely must have. Alright guys, so coming in at number 5 is the giant queen bee. Now, most people are probably watching this, you're familiar with Ark, you know how it works. The queen bee is kind of a little bit of a pain in the butt to tame at times, but when you tame one, you can turn it into a beehive and in turn generate honey at your base fairly easy. So, honey is used for a couple different things, specifically sweet veggie cake. Sweet veggie cake being used to tame certain animals and also to automatically heal a lot of your herbivore animals, making it pretty versatile and useful for a lot of different things. Honey's used for some other kibbles and things like that, but primarily most people are using it for sweet veggie cake. I love having these guys around specifically for that reason. If there's something I'm trying to make that involves honey and I need it, it's highly useful. And that's pretty much the only purpose of these guys, but they're small, I like them, and it's pretty awesome to have. So when you obtain them, when you tame them, they'll just be fluttering around like this, and you can just obtain them. They turn into a beehive, and you can just place the beehive on the ground. It has to be on the ground unless you're running like the S+ version of the domestic beehives, but that's a whole nother discussion. But they have to be placed actually firmly on the ground. So you could just like, if you wanted to do it indoors, you could pop a foundation out and kind of place it inside. But anywho, this place is outside. It's empty in the beginning. If you try to access this without ghillie armor or bug repellent, the bees will attack you and do damage to you. So you want to make sure I usually set a box with some ghillie armor by, or just make sure you got some bug repellent. But in either case, it's powered by rare flowers. So you put rare flowers into, and they can, yeah, of course I got advent codes on, but they're trying to, this is what it looks like. But anyway, you put rare flowers into there, and it's kind of like a fuel source that it runs on. It will generate bee honey over time, and you won't have to worry about it. So bee honey automatically right by your base all the time, which is, like I said, incredibly useful for me because sweet veggie cake is a must. If I'm taming certain creatures that really like honey, like the Megatherium or even the dire bear, things that like honey for that, and even certain kibbles that require bee honey as well. So that's why the giant bee kicks off our list at number 5. And again, this is really just my preference and what I think works for me the best. Feel free to shoot your list in the comments. So without further ado, let's move to number 4. Alrighty guys, moving into number 4, we have the Ovis the Sheep. These are pretty common in certain maps like Ragnarok. You might even see them on Aberration. You'll see the aberrant version of them. The male and female are considerably different. Just from a distance you can tell the males have horns, females do not. So again, if you're familiar with Ark, you already know what these guys do. But if you're not, Ovis actually serve a couple different purposes, taming Ovises. Now, you need sweet veggie cake in order to tame them, which definitely justifies our number 5 slot. But so once these are tamed, they serve a couple different uses, really mainly 2. Really just 2. First and foremost, they're the only form of raw mutton that you're going to get, period. That's it. Sheep. That's it. Unless you're running mods or something else, raw mutton is only obtainable from sheep. So having a mating pair of these is perfect because you can breed them and then slaughter them, which obviously doesn't sound all that great, but you can slaughter them, keep the mating pair, slaughter the others. You have mutton all the time, every time right there at your base. Usually you can go out and hunt these guys down and get the raw mutton from them that way, but the problem is that the spoil timer on the mutton isn't actually that great. So being able to have it here on hand all the time is actually pretty awesome. What I normally do is have these guys set up at a base, and then my taming pen is not very far away, so if I need to come back and get one, I can get one. They actually serve another purpose. So scissors are a thing that, you know, we use them. We cut our hair, that's pretty much it. But we can also use them to shear the Ovis. And you'll actually see a visual difference. As you guys can see, the hair is getting a little bit of a trim. There you go. So you get about 30 wool, and this is on standard settings. You get about 30 wool on here. And visually, there's a difference, so you can tell when you can shear them and when you can't. And it actually gives you wool. Wool is a direct replacement for fur, so you can use it to make fur armor or anything else that requires pelt to make. So having it on hand all the time is pretty good. Now, there's certain, actually, and I don't know if this is hugely well known, but increasing certain stats will actually make things a little bit better for these guys. I believe, and I might have this mixed up. It's been a little while since I've done this, but I might have it mixed up. So increasing the food stat should increase the amount, should increase the speed of the hair growth, and increasing the health stat should increase the amount of mutton you get from them when you kill them. So both stats are ones to level, but more importantly, that's why these guys come in at number 4. Having these things on hand in the base all the time, every time, is incredibly beneficial. And again, obviously having a mating pair of them is pretty cool too. Serves multiple purposes, especially if you're trying to breed if you're trying to tame some carnivores and you want that awesome taming bonus. Mutton's the way to go. Certain animals actually like the cooked mutton, like I think the thylacoleo likes it being cooked. But in any case, that's why these guys come in at number 4 slot for me. Moving on to number 3. Alrighty guys, coming in at number 3 is the Pheomia. Not a whole lot to look at, and definitely serves one purpose and one purpose only. They kind of look like a pig anteater sort of thing, I guess is kind of what they were going for here. In any case, the Pheomia serves one distinct purpose. Now, these guys are usually found hanging around jungles, around easy areas for the most part. Even in the swamp, actually, is where you'll see them, which is kind of odd considering everything in the swamp wants to kill you except for these things. But with that being said, the Pheomia has one distinct ability, and it's specifically useful if you're farming, if you're building any sort of farm, like actual farm growing crops at your location. Now, with other mods, it actually serves a purpose there too, but specifically with just vanilla settings, these guys are an incredible feces producer. Yep, feces. They can poop. Sounds weird, but you need poop to make fertilizer to grow crops in this game. So having feces can be easy if you have a lot of dinos, but let's say you don't. Or let's say you got a cryofridge and you want to save space, so you cryofridge a lot of your stuff, but you still need that to make the fertilizer. Well, that's where the Pheomia comes in. So it is one of the 2 only animals that I know of that this works on. This method also works on the roll rat from Aberration, which could technically, could arguably make it better. The Pheomia I like mainly because it's smaller, doesn't take up as much space, and it's just easier to get all around. But at any rate, if you put stem berries into the inventory of the Pheomia, and again, this also works on the roll rat, and you force feed it these stem berries, its food will like plummet down while you're doing it. But as you can see, this thing is going on a wild pooping tangent, and then you can pick all of this up and turn it into fertilizer. Now, you don't necessarily have to turn this into fertilizer. You can just throw poop inside the crop plots, but turning it into fertilizer is a much better option. But in either case, quick access to poop. That's why the Pheomia comes in at number 3. I find myself always needing crop plots for something when I'm playing Ark, whether it's plant X for defending myself or any of the other oddball plants, depending on where I'm playing at, plant Z, plant Y. But specifically for growing vegetable crops, so your rock carrot, your savor root, long grass, citronal, all that good stuff. It's very useful for a lot of different things. So a lot of these things that I'm showing you, especially these 3 so far, kind of work in tandem with each other. You kind of need the Pheomia to really get good crops growing faster and a lot of them quicker. You also need the giant bee to make yourself some veggie cake, and you need the veggie cake to tame the Ovis to have the Ovis on standby as well. So they kind of all work in unison, but that's why the Pheomia comes in at number 3, and we're going to move on to number 2. Alright guys, coming in at number 2, I'm sure somebody probably saw this coming, is the Dung Beetle. So the Dung Beetle is, again, all of these creatures kind of tie into each other. And this is mainly for people that aren't familiar about what these creatures do, but also to justify why it's my number 2 slot. Now, it seems kind of crazy having this all the way up to number 2, just being a Dung Beetle. However, when you're making crops, the Dung Beetle is incredibly useful. So we talked about that. So if we're farming, we want the Pheomia for making the feces to be able to turn that into fertilizer. Now we can use a compost bin, which takes a pretty long time, even if you have a bunch of them. or we use this guy. So the cool thing about the Dung Beetle is once they're tamed, which they're very easy to tame, once they're tamed, you can throw them in your base and literally just force feed stem berries to the Pheomia to grab the poop, to in turn throw in the Dung Beetle's inventory. Cage it up with something like what we got going on here, or simply a wooden cage, throw it in and close the door and put it on wander. Once it's on wander, it will slowly start to generate these feces will turn into oil and fertilizer. It will produce both of it on its own. You just come back every now and then, pull the fertilizer and the oil out of the inventory, and then throw more poop back in and rinse, repeat, and just kind of walk away and let it do its own thing. Now, again, with mods being added, if you're playing somewhere with mods, there's even more ways to automate this, but primarily this is just vanilla settings. Again, this is useful. So again, number 2 slot for me, because it makes farming so much easier. It makes base defenses with Plan X so much easier. It makes aberration getting flashbangs so much easier. The Y traps on Scorched Earth. It makes everything a lot easier. Fertilizer is the way to go if you're making any sort of crop plots in this game, and it extends the life of them so much better. So that's why it came in at the number 2 slot for me. And again, these are more for like utility, what's hanging around your base, doing day-to-day operations sort of thing. So the Dung Beetle comes in, definitely number 2 slot. I always have to have one of these guys. These are mandatory. This guy and the Pheomia. If I had to live without the Ovis or the Bee, I might be able to, but these two, oh God, I need these two. Yeah, so the Dung Beetle, super useful. You can just carry them in your hand and just kind of throw them around. And you can also, I mean, it's very easy to get more than one of these, right? So you can definitely have, just this room alone isn't very big, and you could definitely have 4 or 5 of these guys running around. Now, the oil they produce isn't a lot of oil. They won't produce a metric amount of oil, but enough to do little things here and there, maybe make a little bit of gas if you need to in a pinch. But the fertilizer is pretty much why you want these guys. Plus, they're low maintenance. They literally eat the feces to, in turn, gain food. Like, they don't have any of that. They'll eat spoiled meat just like most insects, but they're really low maintenance. They just kind of hang out and do their thing. But yeah, the Dung Beetle. The Dung Beetle comes in at number 2. What's going to come in at number 1? Let's go find out. All right, guys. We talked about the top 4 so far. So the number 1, and this is definitely dependent on the map that I'm playing, specifically of whether or not this creature is going to be available. But the number 1 definitely goes to the Gotcha. So the Gotcha still is one of the ones that if I am on a map with Gotchas, I have to have them for a multitude of reasons. But we'll talk about why. So the Gotcha does a couple different things. One of which, if you just throw stuff on the ground in front of him, he'll scoop it up and he'll eat it. He is like just a little weird sloth / trash compactor style creature. It'll grab those things and then eat them, right? So it's going to grab just those walls that I made and eat it, and it will literally eat anything that you give it. It'll create these crystals, drop them off the back. You'll pick the crystals up, crack the crystals open, and the crystals will have resources inside of them. Now, if you don't set it standardly when you tame a Gotcha, it's kind of a random from a pool of that specific Gotcha of what it can possibly drop off. But if you have the ability, and we're actually seeing the crystals form now, you actually have the option to go into this guy and check its production. Now, every Gotcha can be slightly different, but there's a general pool of what these resources could be. This specific one has organic polymer, silica pearls, silk, flint, fungal wood, and sand. Now, I can toggle whatever one of these I want to. So let's say it's organic polymer. I want it to just make organic polymer. So when it drops crystals off of its back, and we'll should be seeing, oh, there's one here. But I think this dropped before I actually got the chance to set it. Yeah, so it gave me fungal wood, but you just crack them open and it'll just give you stuff. We should see this one drop here soon. You also get the chance to drop better stuff. It'll drop higher loot crystals, which in turn can mean more gear. Resources and gear is always a good thing. So anything more automated, I'm totally down for. So let's pop this one open. And again, yeah, 26 organic polymer. So it makes a lot of those weird, hard to get to resources definitely useful. The other trick with these is to get a mating pair of them and then breed them to find out what the offspring will be able to produce. It is not guaranteed. Just because this Gotcha, this father Gotcha, has these things to craft from, it doesn't mean that that dictates what the child gets. It's always random pool. So you can get these things to give you black pearl, to give you element dust, to give you metal, to give you stone. Just about any resource that you can think of can do. Gas balls, the different saps, the different colored saps from extinction. All sorts of different resources. So you can make a pretty awesome gacha farm getting you a lot of resources, which makes these guys incredibly useful. Chalk up to the fact that they can actually harvest stuff for you. On top of that, you know, I can come out here and harvest trees. I can harvest stone. I can harvest metal with this guy. He also turns into a harvester. So you have a harvester / item creator that can hang around at your base and just spew crystals out. This is perfect. He just hangs around. You just drop the stuff you don't want in front of him. Great part about it is if he drops the loot and you don't like it, grind it up, destroy it, get rid of it, throw it in a grinder, get some other resources back that you didn't need to spend any to begin with to get. I mean, the gacha, it's obviously situational because you might be on a map that doesn't have a gacha, but if I'm on a map with gachas, I am definitely getting gachas at some point in time. They're too useful not to. Free resources. Ark's a game of resources, getting the most that you can to build the best stuff that you can, tame the best stuff that you can to fight whoever or the bosses or whatever. And having something like this, potentially being able to auto-gather whatever, auto-produce whatever resource I need, that's a game changer in my opinion. And once I get a mating pair of them, I can in theory get just about any resource I can think of getting. It makes getting certain resources on certain maps not too hard anymore. Gachas are perfect. They're low maintenance. They're a little bit bigger. You know, obviously they're a little bit bigger. So far, everything that we went over was fairly small, but excuse me. No respect, dude. Just none. They don't care. You could tell him. You can tell him, like, hey, I'm trying to record a YouTube video. Do you mind? He won't care. He'll still run out in front of you. If it's not him, it's pteranodons, man. All the time. I can't do anything with them. They just constantly keep coming back and forth. There's nothing I can do about it. They just don't care. They just don't care at all. Yeah, whatever. Anywho. And Pelagornis lands over there. Okay. All right. We're attracting all sorts of friends over here. Anyway, guys, that's my top 5. I'm really starting to get annoyed with that. You're going to have to die after this is over. You know this, right? Yeah, he's showing his butt now because of recording. I'm going to turn this off. I'm going to fix things. Yeah, talking to you. Anyway, guys, that's our top 5. And that's really the top 5 utilities for me. And again, when I say utilities, I really just mean creatures that are going to be around your base, hanging around, doing the day-to-day stuff, providing things that are things or abilities that are really kind of unique to their own of what they do. There's plenty of others I can mention that could be on this list if it was like a top 10. There's plenty of other ones that we could add. Certain things like the Achatina, the snail that can create the paste for you, or the Hesperornis duck that can lay eggs that either burn to oil or lay the golden eggs, and they're also a source for organic polymer. You know, creatures like that could definitely be added to this list if the list was bigger, but I specifically made this list smaller so that I would kind of have to really sit back and think about what 5 I would actually pick if I absolutely had to. And again, that's it. Those are it. So the giant bee came in at number 5. The Ovis came in at number 4. The Pheomia came in at number 3. Dung Beetle at number 2. And our number 1 spot is with the gacha. Thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for being here. Feel free to hit that like button, hit subscribe, hit that notification bell so you can see when the next videos are coming out. Leave a comment. Let me know what your top 5 utility dinos would be and or why. Maybe you agree with the list, maybe you don't, but this is really just my opinion on what works for me. Ark's a pretty big game with a lot of different critters. What works for me might not work for you. What works for you might not work for me. But that is what it is. Anyway, guys, thanks for hanging out. Thanks for watching. Look out for the next video coming out Friday. I'm going to try to have the episode 1, season 1 of our first Ark playthrough series coming out on Friday. So, and also feel free to follow me here, follow me on Twitter, follow me on Twitch. We Twitch live stream Friday and Saturdays at 9 p.m. Eastern. So come by and hang out. We're playing some 7 Days to Die, and that's going to be a good time. But that's all I got. Till next time, guys. Thanks for hanging out.